leaders. Would you guys welcome Kaylee? She's going to come and speak to you guys today.
And right here because I'm really short. Okay. So I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Pastor Brandon's sermon a couple of weeks ago, talking about being full and being a wise person, right? Okay. I'm going to start with a story. Starts with a disclaimer. I do not encourage you to do this, but this is a true story. Okay? So when I was younger, we used to play this game called car tag. It does not sound as awful as it sounds, okay? We would take a car, we'd hide across town, and we would call each other on our cell phones and say, okay, we're hiding, come find us. Well, my cousin and my brother got the genius idea to drive into a wash and get stuck in the wash. After we all told them, don't drive in the wash, you will get stuck in the wash, okay? So, keep this story in mind as I go through this. I want to talk about, sorry, my voice is shaking. Pastor Brandon's sermon, he talked about the characteristics of a wise person. You guys might remember those. If you don't, he said that a wise person is humble, is teachable, is generous, and puts others before themselves, and they are self-controlled. Do any of you struggle with those things? Me? Okay, so I want you to, later on tonight, because we're meeting with our small groups for the first time, ask your small group leaders this question, okay? Have you ever done anything stupid or foolish? I guarantee you, all of them will say, yes, I have, but I'm not going to tell you the story, okay? So, everybody's done it. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does things that are not wise choices. So when you make a mistake, don't think that you're the only person that's ever messed up, because you haven't. I've messed up. Edom's messed up. Shayler's messed up. Morgan is messed up. Amy's messed up. Even perfect Courtney has messed up. Okay? Everybody has messed up. So don't think that you need to hide yourself or hide what you did, because guess what? We've all been there. So I'm going to talk about the Bible verse now. It's Proverbs 13:20, and it says, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. How many of you have ever been with somebody and got in trouble because they were in trouble? Get all your leaders. How many of you got recognized for doing something good because you're with other people doing it? Okay? So this Bible, you just proved to me that this Bible verse is true, right? You guys are so exciting. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my story, because in this story, there was foolish people and there was wise people. All the wise people said, do not drive into the wash. You will get stuck. The foolish people said, I can do this. Okay? So Pastor Brandon said that a wise person is humble, teachable, generous, puts themselves before others, and is self-controlled. The people in my story, were they any of those things? The foolish people? No. They wanted to prove a point. So I'm going to add to those. The first one I want to add is that the wise give encouragement, and the foolish lack common sense, right? So my brother in the story should have encouraged my cousin Cole to not drive into the wash, like the rest of us did, right? We should have said, Cole, we're going to get stuck. Don't drive in the wash. But it happened anyways, right? A wise person profits from correction, and a foolish person despises wise advice. How many of you have gotten advice from somebody and said, yeah, I'm not going to listen to your advice, but thanks? How many of you that raised your hand said, I should have listened to that advice? All of you. Nope, not a single hand went down. Okay, so back to my story. We all told them to drive up on the bank, avoid the wash, go on the bank, okay? And if they would have listened to our wise advice, they wouldn't have gotten stuck, right? And meanwhile, we're saying, we need to call our dads. We're stuck, we can't get out. They're digging out the tires, and the truck keeps sinking because they're digging the tires and then driving fresh sand. Making mistakes, right? So the next one brings me to the point of stay on the right path, and a wise person stays on the right path, and a foolish person lashes out when proven wrong. Cole got so angry that we had to call our dads to get us out. Because he knew he was going to get in trouble, he knew the truck was going to get taken away, and he knew that he wasn't going to be able to drive for a really, 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 really long time. So, and because we all told him, you're going to get stuck, he got stuck anyway. So, a wise person learns from mistakes, and a foolish person keeps making the same mistakes over and over. Again, digging the truck tires out, trying to get out, keep getting stuck. Don't keep making the same mistakes if you've done them before, right? So, again, Proverbs 13:20 says, walk with those that are wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. When we do that, our words and our actions glory.
Thank you, Kaylee. I think we all need to be reminded that to not be dumb, right? Oversimplified version of what she said. So, Ignite. I'm excited to be here. And listen, changing subjects completely. Earlier this month, Disney Plus released something for everyone to watch that was like a huge deal. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Melanie? Hamilton. They dropped Hamilton on Disney Plus. Does anyone know what I'm talking about and or seen it yet? Okay, cool. So they dropped Hamilton on Disney Plus. And if you know me, you know that I love Hamilton. I love the show because I'm a sucker for history. I really like history, and I'm also a sucker for good music and performances. And Hamilton is like that weird combination of both. So, and plus it was something that Morgan and I bonded over when we were first dating, and so it just kind of has like a nostalgic feeling to it. Morgan and I actually got to see it on our honeymoon in New York City. This is a picture of us in the theater with our playbills watching it that night, and it was amazing. Obviously none of the original cast was on there. Like no one that you saw in the Disney Plus like movie or like movie musical was on this. It was all, new people, but it was still awesome. And when they dropped it on Disney Plus, which was like the 4th of July weekend or whatever, when they dropped it on Disney Plus, I had a lot of people texting me and telling me their thoughts on it. Like, wow, it was so this, the music was so good, the performances, the actors, it was so funny, it was so heartfelt, it was so this and that. And even me, who I'd seen it before, I sat down and I watched it and I thought I was emotionally prepared for what I was about to witness. Because I'm like, oh, it's pretty much the same show. I'm just watching it again. Amy has a picture and I have a picture right here. Let me just tell you how not prepared I was for this. This is me toward the end of it, and if you look very carefully, I am crying so hard. Like, I think we got to this one part, and I knew that it was coming. I knew that it was about to happen. It's at the very end, and a certain character starts talking about they started up an orphanage. I hate it here. A certain character starts talking about an orphanage that they started, and I was watching it. It was like me on the end, and I think it was like Damon, Amy, and Morgan, like the three of them, and I was like hiding my face because I was like, this is so embarrassing because I've already seen it, and blah, blah, blah. And right before they dropped that line, I literally went, and then it was over. Like at that point, they knew that I was just crying like inconsolably. Listen, Hamilton, it's a great show with a diverse cast, and it's lots of fun to watch, and it's fun to learn the lyrics of the songs because it's like rap and stuff like that. It's really cool. But I learned something from this show, and if you've been around in Ignite long enough, you've heard this message from me before because I preached it like maybe 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. But there are 3 characters in this show that I think we can learn a lot from. They're all vastly different from each other. All of them have different strategies in life and how they dealt with things and things that came along in their professional career. They all handle things very differently, and it reminded me of this, that we as Christians, we have to be when we are called to be, and we are representatives of Christ in the world. Melanie, you texted me earlier last week and said ambassadors of God, like just we are out in the world representing Jesus. But I think we all agree that none of us are perfect, right? Is anyone in here perfect? Except for maybe perfect Courtney earlier, whatever, perfect Courtney. Wow, yes, amazing, Courtney. We're all going to go through our lives. We're all representatives of Jesus in different ways. We're all going to have different approaches as to how we handle certain situations and how we stand up for Jesus, or maybe the places where we don't stand up for Jesus. But we have to be careful in how we approach these different things, because there are two very polar opposite approaches that I just want to focus on here for a second, that are these methods are reflected in the characteristics of the characters in Hamilton, which were real historic people who went about things in a very interesting way. And if that sounded like a whole lot that I just said, let me explain what I mean. You guys ready? You guys with me? Yeah. Cool. So the first person that I want to just take a quick little study at is this guy right here. Does anyone know who this is? He's in the show. Not this version of him, obviously. Old guy, he's an old white guy. Congratulations. What? No, probably not. Melanie? This is Aaron Burr. This is Aaron Burr. And Burr, let me tell you a little bit about this man. Remember, he's a real historical figure. He actually existed at one point in history. Burr is what we would say, or what we would call cautious. He was very cautious in his approach. If you don't know who he is, he was a New York senator in the late 1700s, and he ran for president in the election of 1800, and he lost to Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was the third president, and his beliefs, I'm talking about Burr, beliefs that Burr had were malleable. Does anyone know what that means, malleable? So what is it then? She said, yeah. Next. His beliefs were malleable. What does that mean? Stop laughing. This is not funny. I'm just kidding. Not like Malibu, like the city. Would you want to try to tell me? Take a guess? It means that they bend easily. Absolutely. So he had malleable beliefs that just kind of changed whenever they needed to, whenever it benefited his situation. People didn't really know a lot of what Aaron Burr actually believed as a person. They didn't trust him. He switched political parties. He did all of these things. He didn't really just have a backbone. He didn't really have a backbone. His philosophy on life was to just wait for it, wait for the opportunity to come and arise, and for him to seize that opportunity. And when you decide to be neutral like this, and now let's put it in context of our faith, when we decide to be neutral about our faith and just kind of, hang back, not say anything, and just kind of be like that, when we don't really take a stand, you kind of become like Aaron Burr. People don't know what you believe. They don't know what you stand for. You say one thing with one group of people, and then you get with a different group of people, and you say something else entirely. In Revelation chapter 3, verses 15 through 16 says this: I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Yeah, I know. It's a whole lot. If you're like Aaron Burr, you're kind of lukewarm. You're not here, but you're not here. You're not strong on one side or the other. You're just kind of in the middle, and you don't really have firm beliefs. They just kind of move with your situation. And Aaron Burr, this is him from the show, Feel the Burr. He was a central character to the plot of the musical. And I know everyone's going to be like, I need to go watch Hamilton after this. He is the central character to the plot of the musical. He's the narrator. A lot of times songs open and he's introducing what is happening. He introduces new characters. He says stuff like he's a friend of Alexander Hamilton in the beginning, but by the end, he becomes a villain. That is not a spoiler. That is history. So, and one of the lines that Burr famously says in the musical is a perfect reflection of his character at the beginning of the show. When he meets Alexander Hamilton for the first time, Alexander Hamilton asks him, how did you get to the place that you are in life? How are you successful? How did you how did you get these opportunities? And Aaron Burr says these words in the show: talk less, smile more. Don't let them know what you're against or what you're for. You want to get ahead? Fools who run their mouths off and wind up dead. This is very much who Burr was. This approach in our faith is wrong. You don't let people know what you believe. You don't say yes, you don't say no. You're just kind of in the middle. Sure, they might know that you're a Christian. People might know that you believe in Jesus and that you are a Christian. You come to church, but when controversial subjects come up, you don't say anything. You just shut down. You don't believe in whatever, you just kind of, you don't want to make anyone mad, and I get that. I understand the want to just kind of keep the peace or whatever, but you have beliefs that you have to stand up for. So this is how Aaron Burr went through his life, and we'll get to what ends up happening with him a little bit later. But the next character that I want to go into a little bit of a study of is the main character himself. Who's this? This is Alexander Hamilton. Melanie just knows this, man. Good for you. Good stuff. Obviously, Hamilton is the main character in the musical, right? And his story is amazing. You can go read up on it, watch the show, whatever it is. But he was dropped in the Caribbean, and he was impoverished and all of these things, and he grew up to be a hero and a scholar, is what the show says. His mom died. He moved in with his cousin. His cousin committed suicide. He ends up working for his mother's landlord, doing whatever he could to learn about things, and he learned about financial systems and all of these things, and he tried to read any book he could get his hands on, and a hurricane ends up coming through the island that he lived on, and it destroys his islands. So Hamilton, what he does, he writes about it. He's like a young kid. He writes about it. He's like, yo, this is crazy. Like, my island is destroyed, and he's describing it in great detail, and he's very smart for his age. And the people of the island notice that he's really, really smart, and they say, he can't stay here. He's meant for more than this. So they, passed around a plate, got some money together, and they sent him to New York City so that he could be a new man. And lots of stuff happens between then and the end of his life, but now he's on the $10 bill. People know him. And Hamilton was much different in his approach to his beliefs than from Aaron Burr. He was very forward. He always told people what he believed, but I think too much, too often, and too harsh. He was seen as arrogant, as hot-headed, and is intense, which at times helped his case. Because if you're one of those people, you put yourself out there, you're like, I am who I am, and you just deal with it, you end up getting far in life in certain things. Like, he ended up getting the attention of General George Washington in the Revolutionary War, and he ends up becoming his right-hand man, and he writes letters for him and all of these things, writing to Congress, doing all of these things. And so to have an orphan immigrant, to by the age of 21, he's with General George Washington, that's huge, right? That's huge. He climbed the ladder. And after the United States wins the war, they try to start this new nation. How do we govern this new nation? And he goes to this thing called the Constitutional Convention. And he's like, I have a whole new form of government that I want to lay out for you guys to understand. And he spoke for 6 hours about it, straight. 6 hours. He just kept going on about this new form of government. And listen, anyone that knew Alexander Hamilton knew what he believed. You just knew what Hamilton believed because he was very in your face about it. But he ended up being foolish about it to the point where he committed political suicide. He was getting targeted for some stuff, and he opened up about an affair that he had. And to avoid being dragged by his political enemies, he said, if they're going to get this dirt on me, I'm going to put it out there before they can talk to people about it. And all of these things happened, and they end up leading his son, Philip Hamilton, to defend his dad's honor, got into a duel, and Philip himself dies in that duel, defending his dad's name. Later in life, Hamilton did everything he possibly could to keep Aaron Burr out of office because he could not stand the fact that Burr had no beliefs. He's like, the other guy that you're running against, Thomas Jefferson, might be my political enemy, but Burr is a lot worse because we don't know what he believes. He just keeps going back and forth. Burr ends up going against Thomas Jefferson for office, like I said, in 1800. He smack-talked Burr until he lost, and they were tied in votes. And at the end of Hamilton's life, Burr wrote these letters to Hamilton. And he said, Hamilton, I know you said some stuff about me. You ended up costing me the election. You won't stop smack-talking me. I need you to apologize. I want you to apologize publicly. And Hamilton's response was, I don't remember which time you're talking about because I've talked about you so much. Would you please clarify? So they go back and forth. They're just slamming each other in the papers. Hamilton's just sticking to his beliefs to the point where he's just being a jerk, right? He's not saying sorry. He's saying, listen, man, I've talked about you so much, I don't even know what time you're talking about. Can you please elaborate? He kind of sucked, right? He was not a good person. Eventually, Burr got so fed up with this whole situation that he challenged Hamilton to a duel. And so they met in New Jersey in the morning, took 10 steps, turned around, and shot at each other. Thing is, Hamilton shot his shot upwards, and Burr shot straight at him, and it shot him in the ribs, and Hamilton died the next day. Proverbs 29:20 says this: "Do you see someone who speaks in haste? There is more hope for a fool than for them." See, like I said earlier, everyone knew what Hamilton believed. Everyone knew what he stood for: a strong central democracy, a strong executive branch, whatever it is. But he would be quick to say something about it, and he did not think through what he was doing, and he would do something stupid all the time, and it got his son killed, it got his career destroyed, and it ended up killing him. Listen, Ignite, stand up for what you believe in. Stand up for what you believe in, be strong in your faith, but don't be foolish like Alex was. Right now, I feel like the entire world is filled with Alexander Hamiltons who are just hot-headed, my way or the highway. If you want to disagree with me, that's fine, but I'm going to hate you, and I'm going to get everyone around you to hate you, and it's all about me, and it's always about what I want. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? You see that out in the world? Yeah, absolutely. Ignite, listen, there's a lot of that going on, and I know sometimes I want to be like that, but I have to remind myself, and I want to remind you to always be graceful, always lend an ear, always be willing to forgive and ask for forgiveness if it's what you need to do. Alexander Hamilton could have lived on and talked about, if he had just talked his issues out with Burr. If he had just been like, hey man, like I know this happened, and I talk a lot of smack about you, but I'm sorry, can we just put this behind us? He probably would have lived to his old age like the rest of his colleagues did. I mean, all of the founding fathers ended up just dying of old age. Hamilton was one of the ones that died way before any of that because of his mouth, because of how hot-headed he was. So you're like sitting here, okay, we got one side, we got Aaron Burr, and on the other side we have Alexander Hamilton. Hot-headed, no backbone. Where do I go? What is the right way of going about being firm in my faith? How can I try and represent Christ well in the world without being too scared or too hot-headed? What is that sweet spot in the middle? And I think that the third person that I want to talk to you guys about real fast had it right. Not entirely, but let me explain what I mean. Do we know who this is? George Washington, a name we all know, right? Everyone knows this guy. He's the first president, the leader of the Continental Army. He's on the dollar bill, blah, 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 blah. Historians say this about George Washington: the great big thing stamped across that man is character. And by character, they mean integrity, self-discipline, courage, absolute honesty, resolve, and decision, but also forbearance, decency, and respect for others. And listen, Washington was by no means a perfect dude. There's no way he could have been a perfect dude. He wasn't Jesus. But he was also still deeply flawed, because at the end of the day, he owned slaves. He was a slave owner. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like George Washington was the best man who ever lived. The man had his flaws, and we need to acknowledge that. But if we look at the way people talk about him and we look at the way he handled things, he sits right in the middle of the temperaments of Burr and Hamilton. Firm enough in his beliefs to lead the Continental Army to victory over the British, but careful enough not to ruffle everyone's feathers in the process. Did you know that when they elected him president, that he was elected unanimously? Does anyone know what unanimously means? That's anonymously. Unanimously means, yeah. I don't know, one of you speak.
Like
All of them agreed. Everyone voted for Washington. Like 100% of the voters voted for Washington, not once, twice. When Washington ran for office, he won. No one was going to vote against him. I'm not sure if anyone ran against him. Shaylor, did he have anyone run against him either time? You don't know. I don't know either. Do you know? Kind of. Who's kind of? What, were you going to say something? Were you going to add to that? Yeah, that sounds about right, because, and I'll get to that in Second, he was elected unanimously. He was just seen as the right guy for the job, and he took it. And he was elected president twice. Like I said, unanimously elected. Everyone voted for him. And check this out. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 24 through 25 says this. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but must be kind to everyone, able to teach, and not resentful. I just want to focus in on, opponents must be gently instructed in the hope that God will grant them repentance, leading them to a knowledge of the truth. Listen, I think we can learn a lot from this approach. People know, if you're open about it and you tell people, people will know that you're a Christian, but there's things that we as Christians do or don't do, and things that we believe and things that we don't believe, but we show decency to people and are honorable in the way that we operate. They know us because we love people. They should know you by your love. I think there's like an old song about that, like they'll know we're Christians by our love or something like that. We respect people and we treat everyone we come across like they're made in the image of God, because at the end of the day, is everyone created in the image of God? Yes, absolutely they are. I think one of the most honorable things that Washington did, and this is kind of touching on what you were saying, is that after 2 terms, he wrote this, and you probably can't see it very well, and that's okay, you don't need to. This is his farewell address. After 2 terms as president, he stepped down. Now, to you, that might sound like, well, yeah, that's what they do. No, at this point, there was no precedent set. A lot of his colleagues thought, oh, he's so awesome, we're just going to have him run and be president for a lifetime. And Washington served his 2 terms, which were, 8 years. And then he said, okay, that's it for me. I'm going to pass this off to someone else. Like Hamilton thought he was going to be like lifelong president, all of this. But they had just broken up with England, and England had a person who was in charge their entire life. He wanted to change it up. He wanted to, pass the power off to someone else. It set up this example that future presidents started following, and eventually there was an amendment put in that said that presidents can only serve 2 terms. George Washington said, that's enough for me. I'm going to move on. I'm going to let someone else come in and take this. And people follow this example because people wanted to follow Washington's example. He was a true believer in his cause. Not spineless, not hot-headed, but upright, above reproach, honorable, of decent character to the people that he worked with. Obviously, was he a perfect guy? Was he a perfect guy? Absolutely not. His ownerships of slaves proves that. He was not a perfect guy. This was George Washington. This is who he was. So as we go through our life, as we go through our lives, how can we apply all of this to our faith? If we're lukewarm, are we really followers of Christ? If we're lukewarm, we're not on fire for Jesus. I don't know if we can call that true believers. God says he'll spit us out of his mouth. He wouldn't do that to a true and devoted follower of Jesus, and that's the description of what I called an unbelieving believer, which was the name of this series originally. An unbelieving believer, someone who believes or thinks that they believe in Jesus, but they don't really act that way. We can't just loosely follow Jesus and expect the full blessing of God. Yeah, believing in God openly and seriously might, step on people's toes. If you're like a full-blown Christian and you do everything that you can to like spread the love of Jesus, eventually you're going to make someone mad. That's just what happens. That's just part of it. And some people, if you haven't been a Christian your whole life, they're going to be like, suddenly you have all these new beliefs, and I don't really like that. I don't agree with that. I'm not going to get behind that. Some people are going to automatically assume because you're a Christian that you're judgmental and that you're holier than them and you're stuck up. But that doesn't mean that you should hide your faith and be ashamed of your faith. But it also means don't be a total freaking jerk that goes around telling everyone that they're going to go to hell if they don't repent immediately. Because guess who likes to hear that? No one. There used to be this guy that I saw on campus at the U of A, and he literally would just hold signs like, everyone here, you are, derogatory term, going to hell. You are doing this. And guess how many people got led to Jesus because he went out and did that? Anyone want to take a guess? Melanie has the right answer. 0. If anything, people saw him and said, that's what Christians are like. I'm not going to go with that. Don't be that hot-headed jerk that's just going around yelling at people and trying to change them right there on the spot. Listen, as a Christian, you won't catch me smoking weed. As a Christian, you won't catch me having sex outside of marriage. As a Christian, I value all life, even the unborn. As a Christian, I won't stand for bullying. And as a Christian, I have my own set of morals and beliefs. But if you don't agree with me, you're not my enemy. You're my neighbor. and I'm not going to apologize for my beliefs, but I'm not going to trample you with my beliefs either. An unbelieving believer apologizes for what they believe, or they're a total jerk that yells at people and gets angry and never wants and pushes those people to never want to hear about Jesus again. Aaron Burr would have fit that first category. That first category where you don't know what he believes. Listen, do you know what ended up happening to Aaron Burr? I mean, he ended up killing Alexander Hamilton. He shot him in the duel, right? He held his silence till he couldn't do it anymore. He lashed out at Hamilton. They got into this big duel. He killed him. Burr won, and because of it, people don't remember him for a lot of the things that he did. People don't remember really like his political things. They just remember that he was the guy who killed Alexander Hamilton. They remember him as the guy who killed the first Secretary of the Treasury, the father of Wall Street, all of these things. They just know him as this guy who killed Hamilton, and then he kind of went crazy and like tried to annex Mexico or something like that afterward. People don't remember much about Aaron Burr. They just remember what he did because he waited and he waited for the opportunity. They don't remember him as cold or, as careful or calculated. They just remember the one time that he screwed up really, really, really bad, and they hung on to that, and now they make him the villain of history. Or a villain in history, Hamilton will be remembered for a lot of things, especially now that there's a musical about him. His drive to get himself out of his situation, for being Washington's right-hand man, the man who made our economy the way that it is today, but we'll also remember his affair scandal, his hot-headedness, and all of these things that ended up getting him killed. If you're hot-headed and insensitive about your faith, people will see you that way. Sure, they might be like, yeah, you know, he's a great person, she's a great person, but man, they can be abrasive. They're really intense, great student, funny person, but don't get her started on Jesus. Don't get him started on Jesus because they'll make you feel really, really bad about yourself. If you're not careful with how you go about things, always be in grace and in love when you're talking to people. People will see you this way. And the last one, of course, is Washington. Listen, again, this man was flawed probably more than we even realize. He owned slaves and all of these things, but his character made it so that we can remember good parts about him. In his farewell address, he says these words: I shall carry with me the hope that my country will view my errors with indulgence, and that after 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the fault of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion, as I myself shall soon be to the mansions of rest. That made sense, right? You understood that? He's basically saying, yeah, I've screwed up. Never on purpose, never did I try to screw things up on purpose, but I'm a human, so I've screwed up, but I hope that in the future, people will see that I worked hard for this country and that my wrongs are forgiven and forgotten as I go off to rest. This is what he's saying. He's going to go off and just rest. And because Washington was firm in his beliefs, but also a gentle and respectful person, that's exactly what happens. People view him now as a person with upstanding moral character. And when you say, when you are that way, you get change in people's pockets. Here's what I mean. If you're a respectful person, people like you, you're kind, you're gentle, you might screw up with someone, but because they kind of know you as that, they're more inclined to forgive you when you screw things up because you're going to screw up, right? Because are you a perfect person? Absolutely not. None of us are perfect. But you might do something wrong. You might handle something wrong. You might say something dumb. And people will forgive you because they view you as a decent and kind and loving and gentle human being because you are trying your hardest to reflect Christ in your life. And I just want to leave you guys with this. Ignite, be unwavering in your faith. There's things that you have to stand up for. There's things that are happening in the world that are wrong, and that we as Christians, we should be standing up to those things. But also be undying in your love for people. Be undying in your love for people. An unbeliever's faith wavers. An unbelieving believer's faith wavers. Anything comes and you give up on it and you change your mind on this or that, and their love for people dies. But if you're strong in your faith and you're trying your hardest to reflect Jesus in your life, your faith and your love for people won't. So I challenge you, unwavering faith, undying love. Let me pray. Father God, we thank you for today. We thank you for the opportunity to come together. I pray that these words have spoken to these youth. God, I know that there was a lot about just history and these historical figures, but God, would you just speak to us today? May we be unwavering in our faith and undying in our love for people. May people just recognize us, that we're trying our best to reflect Jesus. May we try our best to reflect Jesus in our lives. God, just be with us as we go through our lives this week and next week. And until we meet at Ignite again, it's in Jesus' name I pray, and amen. So, we've been meeting pretty much since the beginning of the end of June, and we've been going every other week. So, I'm excited to announce that starting in August, on August 5th, we're going to be moving to weekly Ignite meetings. So every single Wednesday, we're going to be here, we're going to be hanging out, it's going to be awesome. It's going to look similar to what it looks like now. We're still going to do Mass, we're still going to have the same time frame, but we are going to be meeting weekly because I know I miss it when we're not together, and I'm sure you guys miss it when you're not here. Plus, you don't have to try to remember when we're meeting and when we're not meeting, right? It'll just be, oh yeah, I'll be there on Wednesday. So, same time, 6:15 to 7:30 on August 5th, we start weekly in-person gatherings. And one last thing, again, I said that we were going to start small groups, and it is going to look a little bit different than even what we planned for. So, if we will actually do something really, really fast, boys, will you raise your hand? Just all the boys in here. It's like, are you about to tell me some news? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Girls, will you raise your hand?